What's up, everyone? This is Rob from Up Next MMA. Today we're finishing up our list of top 10 most famous UFC fighters. If you have not had a chance to catch our last two videos where we talked about the first 7 fighters on this list, I highly suggest you do that right now. It'll definitely add some context and some clarity to this video where we finish off the list. I think a lot of you OG MMA fans like me will enjoy the next few names coming up on this list as well. And I enjoy breaking down, these fighters and their legacies. So let's just get into it. Mr. Daniel Cormier. Daniel Cormier is another fighter on this list who had a slow rise to fame. Daniel was a collegiate All-American and a 2-time Olympian wrestler before transitioning to mixed martial arts when he was 29 years old. He first gained notoriety during the 2011 Strikeforce Grand Prix, where he knocked out Bigfoot Silva and beat Josh Burnett to win the heavyweight crown. Then he got to the UFC and went 2-0 at heavyweight before deciding to go down to light heavyweight to avoid having to fight his training partner, Cain Velasquez. He eventually got a title shot against then champion Jon Jones, which marked the beginning of one of the biggest rivalries in MMA history. They had a very heated grudge match at UFC 182 in January of 2015, where Daniel unfortunately lost by unanimous decision. However, fortunately for Daniel, 2 months later, Jon would be stripped of the title and kept out of the octagon for a while due to a myriad of legal issues. Daniel won the vacant belt against Anthony Rumble Johnson in May of 2015, and then defended it against Alexander Gustafsson, Anderson Silva, and Anthony Rumble Johnson again. In between all of that, Jones and Cormier were supposed to fight a myriad of times, but the bout was always scrapped due to an issue with either Jon or Daniel. Usually either Daniel got injured or Jon would once again have a legal issue or test positive for a banned substance. But they did finally fight again in a highly anticipated rematch at UFC 217 in July of 2017, I believe. Now, this fight brought a lot of notoriety to Daniel as well as Jon and helped elevate their stardom. Unfortunately for Daniel, though, he was knocked out via head kick in the 3rd round, losing again to Jones in a very competitive fight. However, Jon's luck, Jon just can't stay active. At least back then he couldn't. And Daniel once again struck luck when Jon Jones tested positive for T-ball. Jon was stripped of the title again, hence they gave the title back to Cormier, and his second fight with Jon was deemed a no contest. In retrospect, all of that controversy with Jon Jones only added more popularity to Daniel. Despite his losses to Jon, he was always seen as the good guy in that feud. People tend to paint Jon Jones as the villain. Daniel, like George St. Pierre, was very well spoken. He was very articulate. He was one of those people who always did the right things. Therefore, it was easy to look at Daniel and see him as the good guy, and that overall helped elevate his stardom. Not to mention, Jon Jones' absence just paved the way for Daniel's championship run, which helped legitimize his legacy. Anyway, after Daniel got the belt back, he went on to defend it against Volkan Ozdemir in January of 2018, I believe, at UFC 220. 6 months later, Daniel went on to knock out heavyweight champion Stipe Miocic to win the heavyweight title, hence becoming the second person in UFC history to hold 2 titles simultaneously. Now, he also went on to defend that title against my balls is hot, Black Beast Derek Lewis. Although Daniel would go on to lose the rematch with Stipe in August of 2019, he is still seen as a legend in the MMA community. He now does fight commentary for the UFC, has had multiple guest appearances on talk shows, reality television. He also does analyst work for ESPN. He has a podcast with Ariel Helwani. Daniel is all over the place, and I couldn't personally be happier for him because he went through the fire with John, coming up on Strikeforce, all of that. Due to his fame, he'll probably be one of the very few fighters to retire with plenty of options after fighting, and that's great. Another fighter with a ton of options outside fighting is actually someone that Daniel Cormier was supposed to fight, Mr. Brock Lesnar himself. Now, I have to say, Brock Lesnar is an absolute freak of nature. His athleticism for his size is insane. The intimidating Brock Lesnar is the only athlete to ever hold a UFC title and a WWE championship. You know, he was a box office sensation in the world of wrestling, and he was easily able to carry that over to his MMA career. His popularity and his reputation just catapulted in the UFC to where he was involved in some of the biggest pay-per-view events that they had in 2008 and 2009. He managed to win the heavyweight crown when he knocked out Randy Couture, and I think he only had 3 fights on his record at that time. I think he was 2-1. Yeah, he was 2-1. He went on to defend that title against Frank Mir and Shane Carwin. He knocked out Frank Mir in a rematch and came from behind to submit Shane Carwin in an absolutely phenomenal fight. After solidifying himself as one of the best heavyweights of all time, his popularity has really only been matched by a few fighters since his reign as champion. And we've talked about those fighters earlier on this list, but Brock was the biggest star the UFC had back in the late 2000s. Brock remains a household name in the world of wrestling and MMA, and honestly, he's still relevant to casual fans especially WWE fans till this day. You know, like Daniel due to his fame, Brock has plenty of options outside of both WWE and the UFC. He's done movie appearances, television appearances. You know, he may not be the most well-spoken guy. He's usually always painted as the villain. He curses a lot, but the dude is just a straight entertainment. He's a draw. People love to watch him compete, and I personally love Brock Lesnar because I'm a WWE fan as well as MMA, and Brock Lesnar's personally just one of the honestly, he's an athletic freak. He's an athletic freak. There's just no ifs, ands about it. Watch his fight versus Heath Herring, and watch his second fight with Frank Mir. It's ridiculous how he moves. But on from Brock Lesnar, let's talk about another person who went the opposite way and transitioned from MMA to WWE. Last but not least, Miss Ronda Rousey herself. You can't speak about women's MMA without mentioning Ronda Rousey. She will ever be synonymous with the sport after her accomplishments in the UFC and opening the door for other superstar female fighters. Ronda started her path to fame, like Daniel and Jorge, in Strikeforce, submitting the likes of Julia Budd, Miesha Tate, and Sarah Kaufman, winning the Strikeforce bantamweight belt in the process. When Strikeforce was eventually purchased by the UFC in 2011, they adopted a female bantamweight division and named Ronda its champion. Ronda went on to set the record for most female title defenses with 6 in total, beating Liz Carmouche, Miesha Tate again, Sarah McMahon, Alexis Davis, Kat Zingano, and Betch Correira. During her prime years, Ronda Rousey's shot to stardom and was one of the fastest of any UFC fighter ever. She was the leading fighter on the roster, and I think she was the highest paid fighter on the roster until Conor McGregor came along. She revolutionized the sport, like I said earlier, for future female combatants. She was an armbar specialist, and I think she won her first however many fights by armbar, and went on to be unbeaten for 3 years. She was the top pay-per-view draw, I believe, in 2014 and most of 2015, up until Conor knocked out Jose Aldo. Now, her fall from grace was quite sudden. Her losses to Holly Holm and future female GOAT Amanda Nunes were very brutal, very, very quick and very dominant, but we celebrate her today as being the dominant fighter in her prime that helped elevate the UFC as a brand. Ronda helped legitimize the UFC to casual fans as not just like a bloody, brutal sport, but one where, a very confident, good-looking female can also succeed as a fighter. She has now carried her fame over to the WWE, and she's helped them sell tons of pay-per-views. She's made a lot of money. She headlined at WrestleMania opposite Charlotte Flair and their biggest star, Becky Lynch. She's been able to leverage her fame to do a lot of things since fighting in MMA, and it shows you that Ronda, although her questionable exit from MMA, her fan base is very loyal, it's still there, and she leaves as one of the most famous fighters ever. Anyways, that's it, y'all. That wraps up this series of videos and our top 10 list of famous UFC fighters. Thank you for watching this video until the end, as well as the previous videos in the series. If you have not watched those videos, come on man, go ahead and catch those right now. If you're new here, don't forget to drop a like if you like the video, subscribe, and smash the notification bell so you know whenever we have a new video coming out. We usually have 3 videos coming out for you every single week. Let us know in the comments your thoughts about who you think is the most popular fighter in the UFC right now, as well as other fighters that you just genuinely enjoy watching and you think are very popular. Is there anyone that you guys think I left out of the list? Anyone that you disagree with who's on the list? Are there anybody's legacies that you think are up for question here based on the way their careers played out? Let me know in the comments. Love to talk to you guys. I love talking MMA. I love talking fights. I love talking, different UFC fighters as well as MMA fighters in general. Anyway, have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.